I'm Tom, CEO of Customer Score, and today I will be talking about retention in SaaS at scale. But first of all, something about myself. Originally, I'm an IT guy, data guy. I worked as a programmer before and also as a PM, product manager. And I was a lot into the data. And in my previous company, I was asked, hey Tom, can you find out like which customers we should talk to? I mean, in sales or in customer success, because the guys was kind of blind. They talking to customers just, they had the list sorted by the highest MRR and they called them. And this wasn't much efficient. So we created a simple scoring model, and this is how Customer Score started. So I talked to more SaaS companies, they liked the tool, and then I started in the independent startup. Today, the presentation will be about understanding what retention and churn is, how to measure it, how to analyze, act, and at the end, hopefully, win new customers. Why retention in B2B SaaS matters. Acquiring new customers is 5 to 7 more expensive than keeping the current ones. The cost of the marketing are higher and higher. I remember then that 10 years ago, the cost was, let's say, 1 Czech crown per click, and now it is how much? Maybe 40, 60, 100, depends on the market, but it's going up very fast. This bucket represents your user base. You have a new customers come into the bucket, but there are some holes, some water leaks. One, the big one, is a churn, the customers leaving you. There is another hole that represents the downgrades. Some of the customers maybe downgrade their service. And we will be talking about how to make those holes a little bit smaller or hidden at all. First of all, let's talk about the net retention revenue. Please raise your hands who know what this metric is about, please. Okay, few hands are up. So, net retention revenue is a common metric in B2B SaaS. It is a percentage of recurring revenue retained from existing customers over the period. How it's calculated? We have some MRR at the beginning. Let's say at the beginning of the month. Let's say we have 100 customers with those MRR. Those 100 customers do an upsells. It's 1,000. Also, some of them do downgrades for 100, and some of them disappear at all. It's churned, 900 euros. And we divide it by the MRR that was at the beginning. And it gives you a number, 97%. What do you think is the healthy net retention revenue?
Yearly or monthly?
Monthly.
100. 103?
If it is more than 100%, that means that your user base is healthy and you are growing on your current user base. That you are able to upsell your customers, they are not leaving much, and they are not downgrading much. So this is the first metric we should follow. The other one is churn. Churn is the living of your customers. And many companies focusing on the customers' churn. That means how many customers leave your business. But I think that more important is MRR churn. On the example, again, you have 100 companies, 100 customers, and let's say 2 disappear, 2 churn. 10 disappears. So you can say you have a 10% churn. This is too much. In case just 1 disappear, but has very high MRR, it's much worse. So I recommend to always check the MRR churn. And how is it calculated? We have some churned MRR, and we divide it by the MRR at the beginning of the month, for example. And it is a percentage again. Some benchmark for B2B SaaS companies at scale could be somewhere between, let's say, 2-3 up to 6%. Depends on what are you selling, or if you are, which industry you are in. Now let's jump into the measurement. On this picture, you can see some metrics. Imagine that you put your customers into these metrics. You have a fit, that means how close is your customer to your ICP, and you have the engagement. Usually, you would like to have the most of your customers in this quadrant. Your fit customers that are not using your product much are here, and you would like to save them. And customers that are out of the fit are at the left side. This is the real example from our product. There are thousands customers, and you can see the distribution of them. Before the AI era, most companies were focusing only on the fit customers, let's say here, because it's quite expensive to cover all of them. I mean, to talk with them, to send them the personal emails, to call them, whatever. But now, with AI, we can cover all of them. So customer success and sales can focus only the, let's say, high-touch customers and be very well prepared, and other ones can be solved automatically. And on those customers, I will focus more on the next slides. How to know who performing well and who not in these low-touch customers. I recommend to check billing data and product usage data. And together, it's giving you a good starting point, what to look at. For billing, this is what's most used services, Stripe and ChargeBee. For usage data, it can be Mixpanel, Postdoc, and other services, and we can combine them together. Again, if I combine them, we are getting some product usage data. In the most cases, it can be your main KPIs, North Star metric, etc. Basically, how your customers using your product. And also, we have some structured data, such as country, package, renewal date, number of employees, industry, and etc. Once we have those data together, we are able to analyze them. But to have a very good analysis, we need to have at least, let's say, 100 churned customers and at least 100 customers that already upselled. So we are able to find the patterns there. This is the example of such patterns that we found for one of our customers. We analyzed thousands of signals and thousands of their customers. And for instance, we find out that there are some critical thresholds in their user base. For instance, if post created is greater or equal to 6, there is 2% churn rate versus 22% churn rate if the post created is below this number. And the difference is 11 times. And there are much more of those insights in the user base. I'm 100% sure that you have the similar data in your user base. And this is very important to know it, so you can work with your customers very well. On the other hand, it's not only about the churn, but it's also about the upsell patterns in your user base. Because we would like also to earn more money on your customers. So for instance, here there is a 53K potential just if we manage somehow those recommendations. For example, that there are some customers that are using the low tier and reaching the limits. So we would like to upsell them. Once we have those insights, we are then able to score each of the customer in your user base. In this example, I'm scoring and giving you the churn risk from 1 to 5. 1 is very low churn risk, and 5 is very high churn risk. But the number is not enough because you would like to understand what's going on. Why is it 4 or why is it 1? Because we analyze all the data the customer has, we are able to explain what's going on. So sales or customer success can use those data to better prepare for the meeting, better prepare for a call, and save the customer or upsell the customer. This is just the example where we discussed with Fabian how the score is working. He's sick today, so I didn't screen today. But it was nice that he wrote that all are super valid, and there were thousands of those scorings. I wanted to also share some insights from our customers, like what's general. What was like the, for me, like the most aha was the zombie risk. What is zombie? Each SaaS has some customers that don't using the product at all. They are like have zero activity. And what is interesting from our user base that there is that the lowest number of zombie risk was 20%. That's a lot. And the highest number was 47%. That's quite a high number. Usually SaaS has many of those customers that are paying but never using the product. Other, for example, insight is that monthly customers churn much more than the annual customers. So if you have monthly plan and, for example, you see that there is some potential to upsell, we recommend to upsell the customers as soon as possible because on the annual plan, they are not churning that much. We have the data, we have the insights. what next? We should act somehow to use it. I create 2 playbooks just as examples. So for instance, monthly to annual conversions, because monthly there is a higher churn. So what we can do here. We don't recommend to push them from the day one, but once we see that there is some usage of those customers. Also, what we recommend is to talk with those customers before the renewal and check the activity. If the activity is high, there is a much higher probability that the customer will upsell, for example, to the annual package. Other playbook regarding the zombie accounts. If customer became zombie, there is still chance to somehow save them. For example, send them some invitation for webinar or new features, etc. In case the customer is a zombie from the beginning, maybe it's better to keep them, because if we write them, it can mean that they will realize, okay, I'm paying for some service and we will just leave you. This is the example how we work with those data. You can also do it this is a screenshot from Nathan. There is a customer score as a brain, but you can use your own data storage, and there is a retention agent that preparing the strategy. There could be a strategy, for example, for high-touch customers and also for the low-touch customers. For high-touch, what I can do, send personal email from my Gmail, because it looks much better than if I sending the mass email. I can create a task in the HubSpot, or I can send a notification to the company Slack channel so everybody from the company is aware about those customers. In case of the low-touch customers, there can be the automation sent by, I don't know, customer.io. Here are the agents that preparing the text of the messages. Because if you have the data, now you have the possibilities to send super personalized email. Not anymore, hello, first name, last name, and some, predefined text. Now, because you have the data, you can send very personalized email that covering how the customer behave, and also putting there the information about the structural data. So there is much higher probability that you retain the customer or that you upsell them. And we are at the end. This is just the example of how our product works with Tom Hinch from Surveyor. Thank you very much, and looking forward to questions.
Do we have a question?
Yes, hi. So we are very much PLG company, and I am wondering, because the scheme that you presented here, it is a lot of outside communication, but do you do anything for churn prevention inside the product, kind of maybe banners or anything that in product is visible?
I always recommend to do a combination. So it should be in-app communication with the customer. So let's say to show some banners based on the data in the right time, and also to send the personal communication to the specific customer when something happens. So we recommend to do both in this case.
More questions?
Thank you for the presentation, Andrew from Rate. Actually, I have not a question, but an idea. Because your scoring model with these churn indicators and calculations looks like could be used not only for customers but also for employees. For example, you could take developers. If we talk about IT product, we could take developers, their activity in Slack chats, their activity in GitHub or GitLab. We could take their activity on calls and then reproduce with this model too.
Very nice idea. So we should maybe do some product together with Paul. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Maybe a related question. One of the things I was thinking about, because I used to work for a SaaS company, one of the problems that our customers encountered was just training, right? So even if you have the most beautiful tool and it's kind of self-explanatory and has AI, there's some time where the customer has to adopt the tool, learn the tricks, learn how to use it, but we all know this, right? So is it possible for your product to also track, for example, how much enablement training the customer had before they, let's say, started falling off the cliff? Because that could be a nice indicator that maybe the person who's not active never had any training, right? And that could be an interesting feedback point for the enablement team or the implementation team.
Mm-hmm. I didn't have it in my presentation, but one big churn predictor is also how adopted the customers are. So it's not only about our product, but you can do it like yourself, is to measure the adoption score, to design the path of onboarding in your product and measure, hey, this customer did first step, second step, etc. Because also from our data and our observations, we see that customers that did at least few points from the onboarding are last much more longer.
Here there's one, and then
Yeah, so please, I was wondering, we're talking about customers, actual customers, people who subscribe for the product, they pay, you're able to get the data from the product and you're able to score them. So here's the question, would something similar be possible to do also for those that didn't actually subscribe? They visited your, let's say they visited your advertising, they may have registered at a vendor, but they never subscribed to be paying customers. Would that be in any way doable and legit that you would be able to score the potential customers, so you would be able to scrape the data and find out, okay, these from, let's say 25% of those that did not pay are the profile that I would like to have paying on my site, because I know these would be a good fit for them.
Mm-hmm. In general, it is possible. For this, you need a good data actually about the lead you have, for example, on your website. So let's say country, industry, etc. There are the tools on the market, for example, check Leady, CZ, or Merck, that providing like the visitor information. And with those data you can also score the customers, or visitors, and provide those data, for instance, for your acquisition team, for your sales, so they know how to prioritize their work and who to call as a first one. So yes.
there's another question here.
Hello, Michał from Trackdesk. So I might have two questions. First would be about those zombies. When is the moment you just leave them be so they don't churn and they keep paying to you? And when it still makes sense to contact them? Because if they become zombies, of course it makes sense to contact them. But if for some reason they weren't using the platform at all, I don't know, in your opinion, is there any indication that would tell us that?
I think that depends on you and also on the product. For instance, me personally, I am more about to be more transparent with my customers and with customers general. So I recommend, if you can, communicate with your customers. But for instance, if a customer became zombie and you spot this, so the best is to talk to customer as soon as possible after this happened. If there is longer gap between becoming zombie and contacting, then it can be maybe better to not contact them because they realized, hey, I'm paying for something, so you will lose them. But you have to answer yourself. It is something you would like to do in general with your customers. You see they are not using your product, so you will not tell them and keep them paying. So, it's something like, I just realized that we are paying for Netflix, but nobody watching it because kids are watching Disney and I don't have time for it. And I was paying for, 6 months for that, and nobody from Netflix contacted me.
Yeah, exactly. And the second question would be about upsell. So let's say you have a kind of early stage product and you have a few plans, subscription plans. Each of them is different. How much? And there is not much space to customize them. So you have to sell those fixed packages. How much sense does it make for developers to engage them to make it actually customizable? So you have packages and you have ads on top of them. And how much money it could bring for us potentially. So right now there is no ability to customize the package. Would it be worth to engage developers, to involve them in this so they can make it customizable? So our sales have more space to play around.
I will maybe come here. Again, depends on the company, on your product. And for example, here we analyze the customer, their product, and we found what's common for the customers that are already upsold and what they did before they upsold. And for example, here there are some customers, 360, that were creating 30 plus posts, but were on the plan for 89 euros instead of 500. But this is really depends. You can cross-sell your product, or you can maybe think about some better pricing, where you price the customer for some usage, or something that they can scale even on the current plan, that they buy more. I don't know. For example, in this example, it will be limited to some number of posts. If they want to post more, they need to buy some, additional package, whatever.
And here, let's say this 53K potential, how many customers would be in this example? And what's the, let's say, average ticket?
This example was made on, let's say, roughly around 3,000 customers. This is like the PLG company.
Thank you.
Here's a question.
Okay. Actually, talking about this screenshot, can you talk a bit more where this data came from? Because this looks like a cloud code to me.
Yes, it is. The data came from we have the billing data and we have the usage data. Yeah, so we have thousands of the customers, and we are finding the common patterns there. So there is done the ML analysis that findings those patterns, and then the report is then analyzed by LLM, so you can like read it and it gives you like readable format in this case. Because in the original report is just the tables with some numbers, with some percentages and etc. So it is not really nice to do reading, and to you can't do some actionable steps from that.
I do have a follow-up question connected to Michal's, and then I will go there. It's because about the upsell. When this happens, is because normally people, the example that you were showing that was the black screen. When this happens, is because normally people that have like a cheaper mindset and don't want to pay too much, they find within all the tools, all the possible tools, the one that they can cheat on. The one that has like the workaround that, you know, in this, with this one I can create like 30 plus posts and I don't have to pay more. Because if you will be limiting this, they will definitely go probably somewhere else, right? Or they will have chosen different platform instead. So there's a challenge, like should I, you know, restrict them and get them all upset and, you know, like push them for upgrade, knowing that they came with a cheaper mindset? Or what would be like maybe good practice in this case?
Well, we experienced this in my previous company. I worked for a live chat solution. On you can chat on the website, and we did a bug there, something similar, that you can use the product much more than was in the pricing. So what we did was that we chose one market, one European country, and we enforce the limits, and we saw how many customers upgraded and how many customers left. And the ratio was quite okay, so we decided to enforce this for everybody, because at the end we earn much more money than before.
Yeah, like keeping like a smaller percentage, but all of them paying more rather than keeping
Yes.
it simple. Like, there was a question here and someone else. Cheers.
You mentioned earlier patterns. So when you're looking at clients that have good adoption and they have healthy scores, have you noticed any trends of clients who churn anyways? Out of those 3,000 clients, do you see anything that pops up a lot?
Yes. Like here, it is still some statistical model. This one doesn't mean that customer will not churn, but it's telling you some probability. The 4 or 5 means that the customer will churn with much higher probability than if we score them as 1. Still, the customer can be very, very good, and one day decide, hey, we will use some different feature because, I don't know, the mother company decide, or investors decide that the portfolio companies will use one solution. So in some cases, you are not able to find out. Therefore, also for, let's say, more valued customers, it's always good to be in touch with them. Let's say to have some regular call with them, but this is not applicable for really PLG.
So I have a follow-up question to the cloud code that you showed. So can you share any patterns that you are looking for between billing and usage data? What exactly are you analyzing? Just to have an idea.
For billing data, for instance, how close is the renewal? This is quite strong pattern. Or how long the customer is paying. Because, for example, what we find out is that in case of monthly subscription, there is like big spike of churn in the 3rd month. But again, it depends on the specific company. In your case, it can be like different. Also, what we find out, for example, some countries can be different. I don't know, we find out that for one customer, the South America had much worse churn rate than the other countries, because the clients there was more tend to trying different products even in the pilots. So they were paying and then immediately after 3 months stopped.
And about usage, is it only like the more they use the platform, the less the probability is that they will churn? Or is there also something more to it?
In general, yes, but it's always the combination of the structural data and behavioral data.
More questions? There's one there.
So on the topic of churn, I was curious if you have any data to support, let's say, a co-sell partnership opportunity that closes that has a less churn rate than the typical, let's say, high-touch customer. Is there any data that you have showing that partner sales is better than regular sales?
Good question. I should maybe prepare better. We don't have much data about, I don't know, if the first customer is coming from like some partnership network. But what I can do, I can look into the data after this session and maybe send something later on.
More questions?
Okay, thanks so much, Tomas.
Thank you very much.